That's correct.
Okay, I'm going to ask you about those now. I'm transitioning to ask you about those. First, do you deny the statements that Miss Andrew attributed to you in the Indiana University Hospital?
100%, absolutely.
Do you also deny what Mr. Andrew said regarding those statements?
100%.
Do you recall being in a conference room with Mr. and Mrs. Andrew and the other people that she described being there?
My recollection is of being in a room. I don't know, obviously wouldn't have been a hospital room because they're too small and there were too many people there, watching a football game. What's interesting about those comments were there were a lot of people missing.
Tell me what you mean by that.
Such as Jim Akowitz, Bill Stapleton, my mother, John Korieff. There could have been 10 or 12 people in the room.
And you recall those people being there?
Roughly, yeah.
Okay. So that I understand what you're testifying to, you do recall being in like a conference room or a large room at the hospital with a variety of people.
Yeah, after hearing that, gone back and looked at.
Hang on one second. The question really was, do you recall being in the room? This probably calls for a yes or no answer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Watching a football game.
Okay. So at least that part of the testimony of Mr. and Mrs. Andrew, and I also believe Miss McIlvain, about them remembering you being in a room with the TV on at a football game. You at least remember that part.
Yeah. Oh, I think we can all remember that.
Okay. And then you vaguely recall perhaps other people being there, like Mr. Stapleton, John Korieff, and perhaps your mother? Or
I was never in the hospital without Bill Stapleton, my mother, and Jim Akowitz, ever, in any room. It would be impossible to be anywhere in that hospital without them.
Okay. Now, before your counsel wisely interrupted you, you said, in fact, you'd gone to check on something. What is it you were checking on?
Well, we checked the Cowboys football schedule and realized that there was a game that Sunday, which I think is different than the day Betsy said. And Mr. Stapleton recalls getting a room for us to watch the game because we had more than enough people that wouldn't fit in my room.
Okay. Do you have any recollection while these individuals were there that a doctor or doctors came into the room and discussed with you your medical treatment or your condition?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
That didn't happen.
Okay, do you remember if any professionals from the hospital came in your room?
Not that I remember.
Recall? So that I understand, Mr. Stapleton would have gotten you guys a big room to watch the game so you could have an extended group of people there with you.
Space.
So that's why you're in this room with the TV on.
Correct.
It's not a hospital. And do you recall when in the course of your treatment or stay at the hospital this was? The beginning, the end, the middle?
First half.
Was it prior to your surgery? Prior to your
After.
brain surgery? After? Do you remember who your anesthesiologist was in connection with your treatment there for the surgery?
No.
Did you disclose to any medical professional at the hospital there? Well, let me rephrase that. Did any medical person ask you while you were at the Indiana University Hospital whether you had ever used any sort of performance-enhancing drugs or substances?
No. Absolutely not.
So that just never came up. As part of your treatment, no one ever asked you that.
No.
Can you offer, or can you help explain to me why Miss Andrew would make that story up?
Well, she said in her deposition she hates me.
And do you believe she's making that story up to get back at you or to cause you harm?
Whether she's making up that she hates me?
No. Do you believe that she's making? I mean, she's, according to you, the story where she said she specifically heard you say stuff, and that
Right.
you remember she testified she took Mr. Andrew out and confronted him regarding whether or not he was doing the same thing. Do you recall that testimony?
Yeah, vaguely, but I have no idea why she did that.
Okay.
Other than she hates me.
Okay. Obviously, you had a relationship with her, and you knew her, and you go back sometime with her. And I'm asking if
I knew her very little, not very well.
Why would Mr. Andrew say the same things, if you know?
Probably to support his wife, which I don't know if you're married or not, but
I am.
sometimes is required.
So you think, is it your testimony that Mr. Andrew was also lying when he said that he heard you say those things regarding your prior use?
100%. But I feel for him.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I think he's trying to back up his old lady.
Were you able to examine the tape that Mr. Andrew made of his conversations with Mr. Stapleton and Mr. Knaggs?
No.
Several years later? Okay. Do you remember at the deposition a transcript being produced of a tape he says he made?
Yes.
Okay. If you'll turn to tab 16, which has been marked as Andrew Exhibit 1. I'll represent to you this is a copy of the transcript that was produced at that deposition. Now, I believe, I may have seen you, I can't remember, I thought you had an opportunity to read this transcript while at the deposition. Have you had an opportunity, either at the deposition or since then, to review this transcript?
No, sir.
Okay. I'm going to direct your attention to a couple things that are said, and if you'll turn to what's been marked as page 3 of the transcript. All right. If you'll see there at the top, and I believe Miss Andrew testified that F was Frankie, and we've got either Mr. Stapleton or Mr. Knaggs. If you look down, if you count down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Mr. Andrew is reported to say she won't do that. I believe she would come out with a statement saying that David about the hospital room. She did not tell David Walsh about the hospital room. I know that for sure. And then there's a what, and then Mr. Andrews says, 'cause I never told anybody about the hospital room, you know. Someone says, right. I mean, 'cause, and then it's inaudible, hospital, and you know, I don't know about hospital room happened, but I've never told anybody because David Walsh spoke for me. What does this shit accomplish? It accomplishes nothing. You see that?
I do. It's hard to follow, but I see it.
Okay. If Mr. Stapleton was at the hospital room watching the game and knew that the hospital room incident had never happened, do you have any reason why he wouldn't tell Mr. Andrew, what the heck are you talking about? What do you mean you never told me one about something that never happened?
Well, I don't think he was there to take him on, but I have no idea why he wouldn't say that.
If you'll turn to page 5 of this transcript, let me ask you this before I ask you another question about some actual comments. Did you know that Mr. Stapleton and Mr. Knaggs were going to go meet with Mr. Andrew to discuss the possibility of obtaining an affidavit or a statement from Miss Andrew regarding Mr. Walsh's book?
No, not that I remember.
So you didn't authorize them to go do it or tell them to go do it, they just went and did it?
Not to my recollection.
Did they report back to you that they had met with Mr. Andrew at the 2004 Tour de France and had talked to him about the book?
Not to my recollection.
Okay, so you, until it was revealed at the deposition of Miss Andrew, did you have any idea that Mr. Stapleton and Mr. Knaggs had actually talked to Mr. Andrew at the 2004 Tour de France regarding Mr. Walsh's book and the possibility of getting a statement from Bessie?
Oh, I think that'd be unfair to say. I mean, the tour is wide open. There are people everywhere. Frankie's somebody who was on our team. I mean, people were talking about the book, obviously, so it didn't come up like that. But
Was Mr. Andrew on the team in '04?
no.
Okay, so I think it was their testimony that this conversation took place in 2004. Would have to have been, because they're talking about Mr. Walsh's book, which wasn't published till 2004, right?
Correct.
Okay. I don't think I fully understood what you were telling me. Do you recall if Mr. Stapleton or Mr. Naggs told you that they had this conversation with Mr. Andrew?
Not this specific conversation, but if they could have said that they saw Frankie in the garage or outside the bus, I don't know.
Okay. Have you had a chance to review Mr. Stapleton's deposition?
No.
Do you know why Mr. Stapleton in his deposition testified that the only conversation he'd had with Frankie Andrew at the 2004 Tour de France was to say hello to him?
I have no idea.
Have you and Mr. Stapleton discussed this transcript since it was produced by Miss Andrew?
Well, we were, yeah, I mean, it was interesting that that they recorded a conversation, so we said, I asked him if he knew it was being taped.
What did he say, no?
He obviously said no.
Okay. They never do. What else did he say about the transcript?
That's
or
it.
the tape?
Nothing else?
Did he discuss or talk to you about what he had testified in his deposition about speaking to Frankie Andrew?
No.
Okay. We're looking at page 5 of the transcript. If you'll look down, and it's the middle of the page, and it's statements attributed to Frankie Andrew that starts off with "so," and nobody's been bothering her. If you count up from the bottom, it's the eighth person talking.
Okay.
And he's attributed to saying "so," and nobody's bothering her, and the thing is, I have fucking protected Lance for a long time. Not in me not talking about it every interview I give. I frickin' talk to this stuff. I say everything good, and I like him, and Do you see those statements?
I see it.
Do you know what he's talking about when he says he's protected you for a long time?
I have no idea. I mean, you could say, yeah, Lance is a good guy. Or he could have been talking about our time racing together.
Do you know if he was referring to the Indiana hospital room statements?
I have no idea.
He testified in his deposition. I know you weren't there, and I'll certainly offer you the transcript if you want to review it during the parade. He testified in his deposition that you and he had a discussion while riding bikes together, where you asked him how Betsy was taking the revelation of the statements you said in the Indiana hospital room. Did he just make that up too? Is that not true?
Totally false.
Now, prior to Mr. Andrews' deposition, you did call him, did you not?
Yes.
Did you actually speak to him?
Yes.
What was your reason for calling him?
Well, I think I called because Kathy Lamont had done her deposition and had all kinds of crazy things to say. Which were news to us.
Any other reason you called him?
Other than to say hello, no.
Were you trying to influence his testimony in any way?
Of course not.
Were you trying to warn him?
Of course not. And in fact, he said that on the phone. He said, I totally understand. He says, I haven't heard of any of this stuff either. No.
Did you discuss with him the statements attributed to you in the Indiana University Hospital room?
No.
So you didn't tell him that you believed that was not true during this phone
conversation?
conversation?
Well, I mean, I don't remember every bit and piece of the conversation, but I don't remember that to have ever occurred. So that could have come up in the midst of the conversation.
But I just want to make sure it's not that you don't remember whether the Indiana hospital room incident occurred. It affirmatively did not take place.
No, it didn't. How could it have taken place when I've never taken performance